NCIS. We've all seen the show, and it's a surprisingly successful TV programme with now 3 spin-offs based on a very niche area of policing. That is the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. The US Naval Criminal Investigative Service is the primary law enforcement agency of the Department of the Navy. Its primary function is to investigate criminal activities involving the US Navy and the US Marine Corps, although its broad mandate includes national security, counterintelligence, counter-terrorism, cyber warfare, and the protection of naval assets worldwide. Now, the UK doesn't have a direct equivalent of NCIS, so how does policing in the United States Navy compare with policing in the Royal Navy? So first of all, we have to distinguish between the Navy police and civilian police under the command of the Department of Defence or the Department of the Navy in the US or the Ministry of Defence in the UK. Now, naval policing, military policing in the Navy goes all the way back to the 17th century, to the days of sail. In the 1600s, in the Royal Navy, you had a ship's marshal who had under him some ship's corporals, and he was the law on board. In 1699, the title ship's marshal became Master at Arms, and it remains that way to this day. So the Master at Arms is the ship's policeman. And when the USA became independent, they started their own navy, and they kept Master at Arms as a rate in the US Navy. So they're broadly similar in terms of Master at Arms is in charge of discipline, ship security, and making sure the sailors on board don't run off, don't desert, don't get into trouble ashore, don't break the law. So the Navy Police, the Master at Arms, so everything he does is to do with military law. So you've got the Uniform Code of Military Justice in the USA, and you've got King's Regulations in the UK, which broadly equivalent. So in the UK you've got the Master at Arms, the ship's police. He's there up until 1919. The ship's police branch is done away with, reorganised, and it becomes the regulating branch. So this is where we see the NP disappear from the Master at Arms rate badge, and it becomes just a crown and a wreath. So underneath the Master at Arms you now have regulating petty officers, which basically replace the ship's corporals that was the title up to then. In September 1940, this is quoted from Wikipedia, the Admiralty concluded that the organisation and maintenance of discipline on shore in the main naval port areas was unsatisfactory. Colonel D.H.C. Shepherd, Royal Marines, previously the Naval Provost Marshal in Malta, carried out a study into the requirement for naval provost organisation. He reported that the system of landing ships' patrols in major naval bases, or major naval base areas, was unsatisfactory because the petty officer leading ratings in charge, however well briefed, lacked the knowledge and experience to deal with incidents, and being unable to render lucid written reports, avoided taking action wherever possible. The men detailed for patrol disliked the duty intensely, believing it to be a form of punishment. I mean, if all your mates are ashore drinking and you're selected for shore patrol, it's like, yeah, I think you'd rather be the ones doing the drinking, not the ones keeping an eye on the ones doing the drinking. You're basically the designated driver at that point. So the Shepherd report recommended the introduction of a leading patrolman rating to become the junior member of the regulation branch and born primarily for provost duties. So in 1968, leading patrolmen were renamed leading regulators. So in 2007, the regulating branch was renamed back to the Royal Navy Police. So now there's the Royal Navy Police. We're seeing the RM Police on the rank slides. And then in 2017, a service justice system review was carried out. One of the report's recommendations was that a Defence Serious Crime Unit be formed from personnel drawn from all three service strands. So that's the Royal Military Police from the Army and the Royal Air Force Police. So service personnel are seconded into the unit and retain their individual service police identities. So that then replaces the Special Investigation Branch of the Royal Naval Police on the regulated branch that had gone before. So that's the sort of detective plainclothes branch of the Royal Naval Police. But these are still service members in the service police, they're not civilians, although they still operate in plain clothes. So the Royal Naval Police is headed up by a Provost Marshal who holds the rank of Commander, and he is directly responsible to the First Sea Lord. The history of the Master at Arms rating in the United States Navy follows a similar sort of path to that in the Royal Navy. So established in 1797, the Master at Arms rating was actually disestablished in 1921, only to be re-established again in 1973. So much like in the Royal Navy, you have to be a leading hand to become a regulator. In the US Navy, you have to be a petty officer second class. US Navy ranks work slightly differently, so rather than having a leading rate, you've got petty officer third class and second class. It works broadly similarly. During 1982, the NIS, before it was NCIS, took over responsibility for managing the Navy's law enforcement program. So they basically became the managers of the Master at Arms rates. There's no Provost Marshal in the US Navy, and the Master at Arms community, as Wikipedia calls it, isn't it isn't formally a police force as such. It's just the Master at Arms ratings. Interestingly, again for the US Navy, you're a Master at Arms from petty officer second class up, whereas in the Royal Navy you're a leading regulator or a regulating petty officer. A Master at Arms is only a chief petty officer or a warrant officer. Master at Arms, the title in the US Navy is everyone from petty officer second class up. You're a Master at Arms. That's your job description. So slight difference, but the idea is the same. So of course, the War on Terror comes along in the early 2000s. The Master at Arms takes on more responsibilities. They recruit more Master at Arms, and they're now in charge of force protection. They already kind of were. This becomes a bigger role for them. In 2006, the Navy Expeditionary Combat Command took over the management of the Master at Arms rates from NCIS or NIS. We'll get back to NCIS in a minute. And again in 2011, this changed again. US Fleet Forces Command assumed responsibilities that Master at Arms community sponsor. The issue of the Navy Security Force not having a single chain of command or type commander, similar to how the US Army, US Marine Corps Police, military police, or US Air Force security forces are task organised. In the other services, the entire military police corps are under the direction and control of their respective military police Provost Marshal General. Same in the Royal Navy, you've got a Provost Marshal who's a commander who's in charge of the whole thing. So yeah, bit of a strange one that. So that's the military police side of policing the Navy. So you've got Master at Arms, Navy Police. But on the other side, you've also got civilian police who come under the Ministry of Defence, which in the UK that's the Ministry of Defence Police. So the Ministry of Defence Police is a civilian police force. So they're not part of the military, but they are attested police constables. This was formed in 1971 by the merger of the Air Force Department Constabulary, the Army Constabulary, and the Admiralty Constabulary. So prior to 1971, you had the Admiralty Constabulary, and they were in charge of basically base security and dockyards. That's then been merged with the equivalents for the Army and the Air Force, so now we just have this one Ministry of Defence police force. In America, they've still got Department of the Navy Police Force, which comes under the Department of the Defence. So the Ministry of Defence Police mainly are there for base security. They've got boats, you see them patrolling around Fast Lane. They're all authorised firearms officers, so they're all armed. They look pretty high speed, low drag. The Ministry of Defence Police's primary responsibility is protecting sites of national importance throughout the United Kingdom, mostly through provision of authorised firearms officers at high security sites. As such, it deals with both military personnel and civilians. So they have 6 core capabilities: armed, nuclear security, territorial police and security, intelligence gathering analysis, prevention, investigation and detection of fraud and corruption, and the theft or criminal damage to key defence equipment and assets, to provide specialist civil policing support to defence and other international policing commitments, and to maintain specialist policing capabilities. So really they're, primarily they're a force protection unit. They're not going to be investigating murders. Generally that would be handed over to the regular territorial police. The United States Department of the Navy Police is the uniformed law enforcement branch of the United States Navy. It provides professional civilian federal police officers to serve and protect US Navy personnel and installations. So it's really the US equivalent of the Ministry of Defence Police, but in the US you still have separate police forces for the Navy, the Air Force, the Army. Whereas in the UK, they were all just merged into one Ministry of Defence Police. But the functions there are exactly the same. They're carrying out law enforcement, force protection, physical security, and anti-terrorism. So they'll be the guys on the gate when you drive into your Navy base. They'll be the guys on the gate checking IDs and what have you. The DoD police, or the Department of the Navy Police, they respond to all calls for law enforcement assistance within military installations. If the crime is found to be a major felony, then the matter is generally referred to NCIS. So that brings us to the US Naval Criminal Investigative Service. So its primary function is to investigate criminal activities involving the US Navy and US Marine Corps. Law enforcement in the USA tends to be a lot more complicated than it is in the UK. There are many different layers of law enforcement. So you've got, on the civilian side, you've got municipal police, state police, sheriffs, state troopers, FBI, and all the alphabet soup of federal agencies. So NCIS really is the FBI of the Navy. We don't in the UK have anything really equivalent to the FBI. We've got the National Crime Agency in the UK, which is kind of our closest equivalent to the FBI, really. But we don't have an equal equivalent to NCIS. Yep. So the Naval Investigative Service, how it started out, that was established just after World War II by the Office of Naval Intelligence. So until the 1950s, District Intelligence Office operations were under the command supervision of Naval District Commandants. And investigative effort was frequently parochial, fragmented, and on occasion duplicative from one district to another. Workload, manpower, and jurisdiction investigations and counterintelligence broadened following the Korean conflict. A number of significant changes in organisation and policy occurred during the 1950s and 60s, as well as refinements in mission which culminated in the establishment of the Naval Investigative Service in February 1966. So, on November the 15th, 1985, NIS was redesignated as the Naval Security and Investigative Command, or NSIC, and broadened its missions to include management of the DON security programs, Department of the Navy. So these programs included naval information, physical and personnel security, adjudication for security clearances, as Navy law enforcement and physical security. So this resulted in NSIC also assuming control of the Navy's Master Arms Program, which we've already discussed, and the Military Working Dog Program. In 1986, the Department of the Navy Central Adjudication Facility was established and placed under the agency, as the agency was now once again responsible for adjudicating security clearances. On September 27, 1988, NSIC was changed to the Naval Investigative Service Command, or NISC. This gets confusing, though the organisation at large was still known as the Naval Investigative Service, or NIS, and the commands generally refers to only to the NIS headquarters element. So in 1991, NIS was restructured, and it became the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, or NCIS, that we all know and enjoy today. The restructuring occurred as a result of perceived lapses in proper investigative technique over the tailhook scandal, which involved allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment by Naval and Marine Corps officers in Las Vegas. As a result of the investigation into the tailhook scandal, the Pentagon's Inspector General was sharply critical of NIS leadership, stating that there was a top-down culture showing a lack of cooperation with other authorities in the Navy. By 1992, Acting Secretary of the Navy Sean O'Keefe recommended the word criminal be included in NIS's name in order to make clear their investigative function. Ultimately, NIS Commander Rear Admiral Duval Williams Jr. was forced to retire, and NIS was reorganised as NCIS under civilian leadership. So, long story short, lots of restructuring going on. NCIS's three strategic priorities are to prevent terrorism, protect secrets, and reduce crime. Current missions for NCIS include criminal investigations, force protection, cross-border drug enforcement, counter-terrorism, major procurement fraud, computer crime, and counterintelligence. So in the UK, a lot of those functions will be carried out by the Defence Serious Crime Unit. So you see NCIS investigating a lot of murders on the TV. Also, espionage, terrorists. That sort of side of things is really their bread and butter in real life. I don't think the US Navy's like Midsummer Murders, whereas somebody's dying every week. Oh no, we found a petty officer dead again. The murder rate in the US Navy seems unrealistically high in the TV series, but certainly those kind of cyber terrorist threats are very real, and that seems to be the what they do the most of in real life. So really what you're seeing on TV is the Major Case Response Team, which is tasked with processing crime scenes and collecting evidence. So they collect fingerprints and biological trace impressions and other evidence, as well as photograph the scene and make sketches of important details. There are 27 deployable MCRTs stationed around the world. They respond to death scenes and assist with the investigation of many other high-impact crimes, including sexual and/or aggravated assaults, acts of arson, wrongful destruction and theft. MCR team members also relieve the case agents, that's special agents, to lead investigations in the field of crime scene responsibilities by conducting complex searches, attending autopsies and performing other duties relating to their areas of specialised training. Even though all special agents possess the requisite skills for proper crime scene investigation after attending the mandatory special agent basic training program, the MCRT was developed as a concept to lend a professional approach to crime scene processing. Special agents from all disciplines are trained in additional crime scene processing techniques and are called out on major incidents to search, locate, photograph, document, collect and preserve physical evidence. So yeah, that's British versus US Navy law enforcement. It's quite a fascinating subject. If you like this, leave a like, leave a comment. If if I've missed anything, do you serve with the Navy Police? Are you a Master at Arms? Are you a regulator? Are you in the Ministry of Defence Police? NCIS? Hey, have you got any NCIS? Wait, I just wanted this. Leave a comment. I'd love to know, and I will see you in the next video.